Ladies and gentlemen, the first keynote is the one that immediately separates fantasy from power, because the title idea of making an avoidant addicted to you sounds seductive, but it's a trap. It's the kind of trap that turns love into a drug, turns connection into control, and turns you into someone who starts measuring your worth by how much another person can't live without you. And that is not love, that is anxiety dressed up as strategy. So the first truth I want to land in your body is this: you cannot force an avoidant to be addicted to you. And if you try, you will slowly destroy yourself trying to manage someone else's nervous system. Now, why does that matter? Because when people are hurting, they want leverage. When people feel discarded, they want a move that makes the other person feel what they felt. They want a switch that makes the avoidant chase, miss, regret, and return. And I understand that. But a relationship that's built on addiction is not a relationship built on safety. Addiction is not devotion, it is dependence. And dependence creates fear, control, and eventually resentment. So when I say you can't make them addicted, I'm not taking your power away, I'm giving it back. Because the moment you stop trying to control their feelings, you stop handing them your nervous system. You stop living as a performer for their attention. You stop chasing an outcome that depends on their capacity. And you return to the only place you can actually win: your standards, your boundaries, your self-respect, your peace. Now here's the twist that makes this keynote powerful. Even though you can't force addiction, you can become unforgettable. Not through games, not through manipulation, not through scarcity tricks, but through something avoidants rarely encounter: a stable, secure presence that does not chase, a calm person who won't punish, a grounded person who won't beg, a warm person who won't abandon themselves. That kind of energy is not exciting in the beginning like chaos is, but it is deeply imprinted on the nervous system over time. Because the avoidant is used to two extremes: people who chase them and people who punish them. They're used to either being overwhelmed by pursuit or controlled by drama. When they meet someone who is steady, honest, and firm, their system doesn't know how to categorize it, and that is exactly why they can't forget it. So the first keynote is really this: stop trying to be irresistible through emotional over-giving and start becoming rare through emotional stability. Stop trying to hook them and start becoming the kind of person who cannot be casually accessed. That shift alone changes the dynamic. Because when you chase, you teach them that distance works. When you beg, you teach them that silence wins. When you pour more love into someone who withdraws, you teach them that you will do the emotional labor while they stay protected. And the avoidant doesn't think about it consciously like a villain, but their nervous system learns: I can regulate this relationship by pulling away and they will come closer. That is the addiction you must break, not their addiction to you, your addiction to proving yourself. Because let's be honest, part of you has been addicted to the relief of contact. You've been addicted to the moment they return, addicted to the little text, addicted to the warmth after the cold, addicted to the hope that if you say it perfectly, love them perfectly, wait patiently enough, they will finally choose you consistently. And that addiction keeps you trapped. It keeps you negotiating your boundaries. It keeps you tolerating mixed signals. It keeps you living on crumbs. So the first keynote demands a different identity. It says, I'm not here to be chosen at the cost of myself. It says, I'm not here to earn consistency by shrinking my needs. It says, I'm not here to audition for someone who can't hold steady. It says, I can love you and still require respect. And ladies and gentlemen, that is the moment your power becomes magnetic. Because avoidants don't respect people who chase them. They feel pressure from them. Avoidants don't feel safe with people who beg. They feel responsible for them. But a person who can say calmly, I care about you, and I'm stepping back from inconsistency, that person becomes unforgettable. Not because you manipulated them, but because you introduced a consequence that isn't cruel, it's real. You introduced a kind of love that has standards, and standards are rare. Now here is what this keynote is not saying. It's not saying be cold. It's not saying ghost. It's not saying play games. It's not saying punish them into missing you. It's saying become emotionally mature enough to stop rewarding patterns that hurt you. It's saying stop making love your only language and start making boundaries part of love. Because love without boundaries is not love, it's self-abandonment. So if you want to create a connection that an avoidant can't forget, it starts with this first move inside you. You stop seeking addiction, and you start requiring investment. You stop seeking obsession, and you start building respect. You stop seeking the high, and you start choosing stability. And the moment you make that shift, you step out of the role of the pursuer and into the role of the standard. That role is not flashy, but it is powerful. And it is the only role that can ever create real attachment. The kind that is built on safety, not on desperation. Ladies and gentlemen, The second keynote is the one that changes how you play this entire game. Avoidants do not attach to intensity, they attach to safety. And I know that sounds backwards, because what you've probably experienced is intensity at the beginning, fireworks, chemistry, passion, long nights, deep talks, fast closeness. It feels like the strongest kind of connection. It feels like fate. It feels like finally. But then, as soon as it starts to feel real, as soon as it starts to carry expectation, as soon as it starts to require consistency, the avoidant pulls away. And you're left thinking, if intensity doesn't keep them, what does? Safety does. But not the kind of safety people misunderstand. Not the safety of you being endlessly available. Not the safety of you tolerating inconsistency. Not the safety of you forgiving everything without repair. That kind of safety is not safety. It's a lack of consequences. It's access without responsibility. And that does not create attachment, it creates comfort for them and anxiety for you. The safety avoidance attached to is nervous system safety. The feeling that closeness will not swallow them, that connection will not trap them, that love will not become pressure, that intimacy will not become a courtroom where they are constantly failing. Avoidants are often wired by early experiences where closeness came with criticism, control, emotional unpredictability, or suffocation. So when they start to feel emotionally seen, their system can interpret it as danger. Not because you're dangerous, but because their nervous system learned to associate dependence with pain. This is why intensity doesn't attach them long-term. Intensity actually triggers them. Intensity creates rapid closeness. Rapid closeness creates vulnerability. Vulnerability triggers fear. Fear triggers withdrawal. So the more intense you become in response to their distancing, the more you confirm their internal alarm. This is too much, I'm being pulled in, I need space. So your power is not to become more intense. Your power is to become more regulated. Because safety is not created by perfect words. Safety is created by your emotional steadiness. It's created by your ability to be consistent without being clingy, warm without being needy, present without demanding, firm without being cruel, clear without being dramatic. That combination is rare, and it does something profound to an avoidant nervous system. It reduces threat. Here's a simple truth. Avoidants can handle attraction easily. They can handle chemistry. They can handle flirting. They can handle fun. What they struggle to handle is emotional responsibility, because emotional responsibility requires staying present when their nervous system wants to run. So when they encounter someone whose presence is calm, whose boundaries are clear, whose emotions are steady, they begin to feel something unfamiliar. Closeness without chaos. Now let's get practical. How do you become safety? First, you stop turning your emotions into negotiations. When they pull away, you don't flood them with paragraphs. You don't demand reassurance. You don't punish with silence. You don't blow up and then apologize. Those moves create spikes, and spikes create threat. Instead, you communicate briefly, clearly, and calmly. I like you. I'm open to continuing. I need consistency. That's it. No emotional essay. No chase. Second, you become predictable in your self-respect. This is crucial. Avoidants attach to safety when they know the relationship is not a roller coaster. If you are warm one day and cold the next, if you disappear to punish them, if you play games, if you test them, you become the very thing they fear, emotional unpredictability. So you stay steady. You mean what you say. You follow through. You don't make threats you can't keep. You don't say, I'm done, and then chase. You stay congruent. Congruence is safety. Third, you stop rewarding avoidance. This is the part most people miss. If every time they withdraw you chase, you are teaching them that withdrawal regulates the relationship. You're teaching their nervous system. If I run, they'll come closer. That makes running a habit. But if every time they withdraw you calmly step back, you teach a new lesson. Closeness requires presence. Not with anger, with reality. That lesson makes attachment possible, because it links connection to responsibility. And here's the paradox. The more you become safety, the less you will feel the need to be chosen. Because your nervous system will stop being addicted to relief. You will stop craving the highs and lows. You will stop confusing anxiety with chemistry. You will stop mistaking intensity for love. You will begin to value stability more than sparks, and that is the moment you become irresistible in the healthiest way, not because you're manipulating, but because you're anchored. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I want to say something that will protect you. Safety does not mean you tolerate neglect. Safety does not mean you accept breadcrumbs. Safety does not mean you wait in limbo. Safety means you are emotionally regulated enough to walk away from inconsistency without collapsing. Safety means you can love without losing yourself. Safety means you can offer warmth without offering unlimited access. And that is why avoidants attach to safety. Because when they feel you're calm, they feel their own nervous system settle. When they feel your boundaries, they feel the relationship has structure. When they feel your steadiness, They feel closeness without fear. And if they are capable of growth, that experience becomes unforgettable because it shows them a kind of connection they've rarely had, love without chaos, intimacy without suffocation, closeness with respect. That is the second keynote. Stop trying to be intense enough to hook them and start becoming safe enough to be remembered. Ladies and gentlemen, the third keynote is the one that explains why so many people feel powerless with an avoidant. Because the moment the avoidant pulls back, you instinctively do what love taught you to do. You move closer, you text more, you reassure more, you explain more. You become softer, sweeter, more available. And you think you're building safety, but in that moment you are actually feeding the cycle that keeps you stuck. The mistake is simple. When they pull back, you chase harder, and the harder you chase, the more their nervous system experiences you as pressure, and the more they retreat. That is the loop. Now, I want you to hear this clearly. This loop is not about you being too much. It's about you responding to their withdrawal like a secure person would, while they respond to closeness like an avoidant would. A secure nervous system sees closeness as connection. An avoidant nervous system sees closeness as potential loss of control. So when you chase, you think you're saying, I care, but their body hears, I'm being trapped. When you send paragraphs, you think you're saying, let's fix this, but their body hears, I'm being overwhelmed. When you ask for reassurance, you think you're saying, help me feel safe, but their body hears, I'm responsible for someone's emotional state. And if they carry shame around being inadequate, that responsibility feels like danger. So they do the only thing they know how to do to lower their anxiety. They create distance. This is why chasing is so counterproductive with avoidance. It gives them relief by letting them withdraw. Your pursuit becomes their escape hatch, and the relationship becomes a dance where you do the emotional labor and they manage the control. You become the one regulating both hearts while they regulate themselves by disappearing. Over time, you start to feel like you're always doing it wrong, always saying too much, always asking too much, always caring too much. But the truth is, you're simply trying to build intimacy with someone who hasn't learned how to hold it. Now here's where it gets even deeper. Chasing doesn't just trigger them, it also trains them. Because nervous systems learn through patterns. If every time they withdraw you pursue, their nervous system learns withdrawing works. It works to regain space. It works to end uncomfortable conversations. It works to avoid accountability. It works to restore control. Even if they don't think about it consciously, the pattern reinforces itself. Withdrawal becomes a tool, and you become the predictable response that makes the tool effective. And ladies and gentlemen, that's why avoidants don't change while you keep chasing. Because the consequence of withdrawal never arrives. The uncomfortable conversation dies. The accountability fades. The repair never has to happen. Time passes, you miss them, they come back, and the cycle resets. That's how years disappear. Now I want you to notice something crucial. Chasing is not just something you do, it's something that happens inside your nervous system. When they pull back, your body experiences threat, abandonment, uncertainty. Your mind starts looping, what did I do? Are they losing interest? Are they with someone else? Should I say something? And because uncertainty is unbearable, you reach for the fastest relief: contact. One more text, one more check-in, one more explanation, one more attempt to soothe them so they return. That relief feels like survival. But if you use chasing as relief, you become addicted to relief. You start needing the response to calm down. You start needing their reply to feel okay. And that's how you lose your power, not because you're weak, but because your nervous system has been trained to depend on their attention to feel safe. So the third keynote is not don't care, it's don't chase. Caring is beautiful. Chasing is self-abandonment. Caring says, I value you. Chasing says, I will sacrifice myself to keep you. And avoidants feel that sacrifice as pressure, because the more you sacrifice, the more they feel responsible for your well-being. And responsibility is what they avoid. So what do you do instead? You replace chasing with clarity. You replace emotional flooding with calm standards. You replace pursuit with a simple truth delivered once. Something like, I like you, and I'm open to continuing, but I need consistency and honest communication. If you're not available for that, I'll step back. That is not a threat. That is not manipulation. That is reality. And then you stop. You do not chase the boundary. You do not explain it 5 different ways. You do not soften it until it becomes meaningless. You let it stand. Because the moment you stop chasing, something powerful happens. You stop being the fuel of the avoidance cycle. You stop being the emotional laborer who keeps the connection alive. You stop being the one who teaches them they can withdraw without consequences. And now, for the first time, their withdrawal leads to loss of access, not to your devotion. That is the only environment where an avoidant can either grow or leave. Either they learn that closeness requires presence, or they prove they only wanted you when it was convenient. And this is the key, ladies and gentlemen. Chasing is the habit that keeps you stuck, and stopping is the move that sets you free. Because when you no longer chase, you are no longer begging to be chosen. You are choosing yourself, and that is the beginning of real power. Ladies and gentlemen, the fourth keynote is the moment the entire dynamic flips, because this is where you stop reacting like a wounded person and start moving like a grounded person. The move is simple, but it's surgical. Stop rewarding distance with devotion and replace it with calm standards. And if you don't understand why this is so powerful, you'll keep repeating the same painful pattern. They withdraw, you chase, they feel relief, you feel anxiety. They return when they want, you forgive to keep them. And the cycle becomes your normal. Let's be honest about what rewarding distance looks like. It looks like you sending a long message when they go cold, hoping your love will pull them back. It looks like you offering reassurance when they've given you silence. It looks like you apologizing when you didn't do anything wrong, just to restore peace. It looks like you accepting vague answers because you're afraid clarity will make them disappear. It looks like you making yourself smaller so they feel safer. And every time you do that, you are teaching their nervous system a lesson. When I withdraw, I get comfort. When I go quiet, they work harder. When I pull away, they move closer. That's not love, that's conditioning. Now, here's the part that stings. Many people think devotion proves love. But devotion given at the wrong time teaches the wrong behavior. Devotion should be given in response to care, consistency, and respect, not in response to avoidance. Because if you reward avoidance, you don't create intimacy, you create entitlement. You create a relationship where they can dip in and out, and you will still be there holding the emotional door open. So what do calm standards do? Calm standards do something avoidants secretly need but rarely admit. They create structure. Avoidants often feel overwhelmed by emotional chaos, by intensity, by dramatic conversations, by messy feelings. But structure makes the nervous system calmer. Structure is predictable. Structure is clear. Structure says, this is what closeness requires. And when you move from emotional pleading to calm standards, you stop being a source of pressure and become a source of clarity. Let me explain what this looks like in real time. The avoidant pulls away, and the old you would panic and chase. You'd send paragraphs, ask questions, try to fix it, offer reassurance, perform love. But the new you does something completely different. You pause, you breathe, you don't punish, you don't beg, you simply communicate once in a steady tone. I like you and I'm open to continuing, but I'm not available for hot and cold. I need consistency and honest communication. And then you stop, you don't argue, you don't convince, you don't plead, you let the standard stand on its own legs. This is where people get it wrong. They say the boundary, and then they chase the boundary. They explain it 5 different ways, they soften it, they apologize for it, they offer more love to make it easier. And the avoidant learns, even your boundaries are negotiable. Calm standards only work when they are real. Now, why does this flip the avoidant psychology? Because it removes the reward of withdrawal. If withdrawal no longer produces your devotion, then withdrawal stops being useful. The avoidant can't regulate the relationship by disappearing, because disappearing now creates distance they don't control. And that's the key. Your calm standard removes their leverage. It doesn't attack them, it simply removes the old trade. You withdraw, I chase. That trade is what kept them comfortable and you anxious. And there's another layer to this. Calm standards signal emotional maturity, and emotional maturity is rare. Most people either chase or punish. They either beg or ghost. They either explode or collapse. So when an avoidant meets someone who can be warm and firm at the same time, it disrupts their expectations. They can't label you as needy because you're not chasing. They can't label you as cruel because you're not punishing. You're simply steady. And steadiness is what creates that deep imprint. Not obsession, imprint. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I need you to hear the truth about what happens next. When you replace devotion with standards, the avoidant will often test you. They will send a casual message to see if you'll rush back. They'll act like nothing happened to see if you'll ignore the pattern. They may disappear again to see if you crack. They may try to pull you into the old dance. This is not always manipulation, it's their nervous system checking if the old strategy still works. Your job is to stay consistent, warm, brief, clear. No reward for distance. No emotional flooding. No instant access. Because the most powerful part of calm standards is the follow-through. Standards without follow-through are just words. Standards with follow-through become reality. And reality rewires behavior. This is where you become unforgettable. Not because you are playing games, but because you are no longer available for inconsistency. You become the person who offers love with structure. The person who offers warmth with boundaries. The person who doesn't chase, doesn't punish, and doesn't abandon themselves. And that energy, ladies and gentlemen, is what changes an avoidance nervous system more than any paragraph ever will. Ladies and gentlemen, the fifth keynote is the rare combination that an avoidant cannot easily forget. A secure base with a locked gate, warmth without worship, kindness without collapse, availability without unlimited access. This is the balance most people never master, and it's why they keep losing themselves with avoidance. They think they have only two options: either be completely available to prove love, or be completely distant to protect pride. Either chase or ghost, either beg or punish. But the fifth keynote introduces a third option, the emotionally mature option. You can be loving and firm at the same time. A secure base means your presence is calm, your tone is steady, your energy is regulated. You don't swing from sweet to cold. You don't threaten and then chase. You don't explode and then apologize. You don't use silence as punishment. You don't play mind games. You feel your emotions, but you don't dump them. You communicate clearly, but you don't flood. That is a secure base. It tells the nervous system, this person is safe, predictable, emotionally grown. And the locked gate means your access is earned. It means your warmth is not a free for all. It means your love does not come with self-abandonment. It means when someone is inconsistent, you do not reward it with more access. It means when someone disappears, you do not reopen the door like nothing happened. It means you have standards that protect your peace. You can be open, but you are not available for chaos. Now, why is this so powerful specifically for avoidance? Because avoidants often live in extremes. They either feel engulfed or they feel free. They either feel pressured or they feel distant. Their nervous system has trouble holding the middle. And when they meet someone who can hold the middle, it is confusing in a good way. Because most of the time, they experience closeness with strings attached, drama, demand, emotional flooding, accusations, controlling energy. Or they experience distance with punishment, ghosting games, revenge. Both extremes confirm their belief that intimacy is unsafe. But a secure base with a locked gate sends a different message. It says, closeness with me is safe, but it is not sloppy. It says, you won't be punished here, but you also won't be enabled. It says, you don't have to fear me, but you can't take me for granted. And that combination creates a powerful psychological effect. It lowers their threat response while increasing their respect. And respect is where real attachment grows. Because let's be honest, avoidants often don't value what is freely available. Not because they're cruel, but because their nervous system reads unlimited access as pressure and expects loss of freedom. When you are always available, always forgiving, always chasing, they may feel guilty, overwhelmed, and less attracted. They feel like they can't breathe. But when your love has structure, when it is calm and boundaried, they feel breathing room without losing connection. That is the middle ground their nervous system has rarely felt. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the locked gate is the part that changes your life. Because many people can be warm. Many people can be kind. Many people can love. But when they love, they become porous, they leak, they overgive, they abandon themselves. They start tolerating disrespect because they don't want to lose the person. They turn their love into a bargain. If I give more, I'll be chosen. That is not love, that is survival. And avoidants sense that survival energy. It feels like pressure even if you never say a word. So the locked gate is you changing the energy. You stop bargaining. You stop auditioning. You stop proving. You start requiring. Not requiring perfection, requiring consistency, requiring communication, requiring respect, requiring repair, and you do it without drama. That's the key. The gate is locked, but the person at the gate is calm. Here is what this looks like in real behavior. They disappear for a day and you don't send 5 texts. You carry yourself. You live your life. When they return casually, you don't punish, but you don't pretend. You say something simple. Good to hear from you. I'm open to talking, but I need consistency if we're doing this. Then you stop. If they show up with effort, you meet them with warmth. If they show up with crumbs, you keep the gate closed. No anger, no lectures, no begging. Just standards. And this is where people misunderstand. They think being boundaried means being cold. No. Being boundaried means being clear. You can still be kind. You can still be affectionate. You can still be emotionally available in healthy moments. But you are not available for the pattern that hurts you. The gate is not locked because you hate them. It's locked because you respect you. Now, what does this do to an avoidant? It removes their ability to regulate the relationship through withdrawal. They can't disappear and return to full intimacy instantly because access has conditions now. They also can't accuse you of being harsh because you're calm. They can't call you needy because you're not chasing. They can't call you manipulative because you're consistent. Your energy becomes clean, and clean energy is magnetic. But here's the deeper truth. This keynote is not ultimately for them. It's for you. Because when you become a secure base with a locked gate, you stop being controlled by their behavior. You stop riding the roller coaster. You stop losing yourself in the chase. You become the person who can love without collapsing. And whether the avoidant grows or leaves, you win. You win because you finally built the one relationship that determines all others, the relationship with yourself. Ladies and gentlemen, the sixth keynote is the part most people skip, and that's why they keep repeating the same cycle. The words are not the magic. The follow-through is. Anyone can say a boundary. Anyone can deliver a powerful speech. Anyone can send one confident message and feel strong for 5 minutes. But if your behavior collapses the moment they test you, then your standard was never real, it was a performance. And avoidants can feel the difference instantly. They don't just listen to what you say, they watch what you tolerate. So let's talk about the final power moment, the clean sentence. The calm line in the sand, I care about you, but I'm not available for hot and cold. If you want something real, I'm open. If not, I'll step back. That sentence is not meant to threaten. It's meant to clarify. It's not meant to manipulate. It's meant to protect. It's the moment you stop giving unconditional access to conditional effort. It's the moment you stop translating their inconsistency as fear and start treating it as information. But here is where everything is decided. What happens after you say it? Because the avoidant will test you, not always consciously, but predictably. Their nervous system is built on checking whether closeness is safe and whether they still have control over access. So after your boundary, you might get one of these moves, a casual hey, as if nothing happened, a sweet message with no accountability, a sudden burst of attention that fades fast, a long silence to see if you break, a tiny breadcrumb to see if it earns full access, or even a defensive response that tries to make your standard look like a flaw. You're overreacting. You're too intense. Why are you making this a big deal? These moments are not random. They are the doorway. And the way you respond determines whether you just changed your life or you just acted confident for one day. Follow through means your behavior matches your words even when your emotions are screaming. It means you don't soften the boundary because you miss them. It means you don't chase the conversation because you're anxious. It means you don't reward breadcrumbs because you're lonely. It means you don't collapse into over-explaining because you want to be understood. Because here's the truth, wanting to be understood by an avoidant can become a silent form of self-abandonment. You keep trying to speak the perfect language that will finally make them show up, but the problem was never your language. The problem is their capacity. So follow-through looks like this. You say the standard once, and then you let reality do the teaching. If they come back with consistency, you meet it. If they come back with crumbs, you don't. If they disappear, you don't chase. If they return casually, you don't jump back into intimacy. You can be kind, but you don't reopen the door fully. Warmth stays, access is earned. And ladies and gentlemen, this is why follow-through is so rare, because it requires you to tolerate discomfort. You must tolerate the discomfort of not knowing what they'll do. You must tolerate the discomfort of letting silence sit. You must tolerate the discomfort of not rescuing the connection. You must tolerate the discomfort of being the bad guy in their story. You must tolerate the discomfort of missing them without running back to them. That is emotional adulthood. Now I want you to understand what follow-through is not. It's not ghosting to punish. It's not posting things to provoke jealousy. It's not acting cold to teach them a lesson. That is still chasing, just in a different costume. That is still you trying to control their response. Follow-through is quieter. It's cleaner. It's you living your life in alignment with your standard, whether they react or not. Here's the most powerful part of follow-through. It makes your energy believable, and believability is what creates respect. Avoidants often don't respond to intensity, they respond to certainty, not aggressive certainty, calm certainty. The certainty of someone who won't collapse. The certainty of someone who won't beg. The certainty of someone who won't stay where they are not valued. That certainty tells their nervous system, this person is not available for the old cycle. And when the old cycle is no longer available, the avoidant has only two options, grow or lose access. This is why the sixth keynote is the true turning point. Because in your life, you have probably already set boundaries before. You have probably already promised yourself you'd pull back. You have probably already told yourself you wouldn't chase. But then they returned with one sweet message, one apology, one memory, one tiny hook, and your heart collapsed back into the old role. That collapse trained them, even if you never meant to. Your boundary is temporary. Your standards are negotiable. Your love will override your self-respect. So now, ladies and gentlemen, the final keynote is you ending that training. You end it by becoming consistent with yourself. You end it by valuing your peace more than your hope. You end it by choosing your dignity in the moment your nervous system wants relief. Because relief is what kept you stuck, and discipline is what sets you free. And here is the most beautiful truth. The moment you truly follow through, you stop needing the avoidant to change for you to feel powerful. Because you become the person who can walk away from inconsistency without falling apart. You become the person who can love without losing themselves. You become the person who offers warmth, but not endless access. And that is the only kind of love that is actually safe for you, and for anyone who wants to build something real with you.